Hi everyone, this is chapter 16, the very first section, 16.1, and we're going to talk about and practice some calculation of simple interest and maturity value. Maturity value is the amount that is owed at the end of the loan. So you take your principal amount, you add the interest, and then that's called your maturity value. The simple interest formula is I equals PRT, and that means that we're going to multiply the principal times the rate times the time. The rate is stated as a percent, but we will change it to a decimal to calculate, and the time is in years. And so if it's not a full year, we'll write a portion of a year. Like this first one we're looking at is going to be for 8 months. So when we set this up with the 8 months, we're going to put 8 months over 12 because that is going to be a portion of a year. So using the simple interest formula, remember it's multiplication. The principal amount in this case is $30,000. Our rate is 5%. We're going to write that in decimal form. And then we already talked about the fact that the loan is for 8 months. So it's going to be 8 months out of 12 months. So if they give you a month, you're going to use the months. If they give you days, you'll use days. And we'll talk about that more as we go. Now, we basically just calculate interest. So you multiply with your calculator. Now, you enter that in as 30,000 times 0.05 times 8 divided by 12, and you can do this all in one calculation. After doing that, you will get $1,000 in interest. And once we know the interest, we can calculate our maturity value. I'm going to write that out. And that's basically just the principal we borrowed, the $30,000, plus the amount of interest. And so at the end of this loan, right, at the end of the 8 months, we're going to owe $31,000. Now, chapter 16 is all about using this interest formula and various types of things that you're going to be learning. So you definitely want to know the formula that it's I equals PRT, principal times rate times time. Now we're going back kind of to that same example from number 1. What happens to the interest and maturity value if Hope borrowed the money for 1 year? So we're going to calculate the interest if she borrows for 1 year versus 8 months. So you can, as you might expect, this is going to be a little bit more interest because it's for 1 year. All right, so remember on this one, we had 5% for 8 months, and now we have 5%, 30,000 for 1 year. So my interest is 1,500. So that 4 more months made a difference of $500. Maturity value will be $30,000 plus $1,500. So $31,000 and $31,500. I'm having trouble speaking today, apparently. Okay, next, we're going to use that same loan amount. What if she borrowed the money for 18 months? So we're going to write this out, 30,000 times our interest rate. Now our time this time is going to be 18 out of 12, which if you calculated that, that's 1.5. So you really can just enter in 1.5 when you get to that part. Remember on our calculator, we would put 30,000 times 0.05 times 18 divided by 12. Remember, a fraction bar means divide. And then our interest amount would be $2,250. 50. And once again, we are finding maturity value. I really need to start abbreviating this or something. And that would be 30,000 plus our interest amount. So that is $32,250. So this whole thing, these first three questions were just about looking at what happens to the interest for different time periods. All right, let's look at the next one. So on this one, we're going to calculate this two different times. One of those is with exact interest, and that's using a time period of 365 days versus ordinary interest where we would use 300. Sorry, I had to pause for a moment to cough a little bit. So we're going to compare the exact interest of 365 days per year versus ordinary interest of 360 days per year. So it's going to be the same loan that we're going to calculate two times. Okay, so on this, notice that our loan is for $1,500 at 7% interest. And then it's from March 15th to June 23rd. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of a reminder about your date function. Remember to find your date function, you're going to push second format, and format is on the decimal key. Excuse me. So we're going to calculate that. And just as a reminder, DT1, we're going to put in March in this form, March 15th, 3.15, and we'll just use 2021 here. And then remember you push enter. And then scroll to DT2. And for that, we're going to put in June 23rd, so that's the 6th month. Sometimes you may have to look on a calendar or count this up. So it's June 23rd, 6.2321. Don't forget to push your enter key, the word enter. And then when you get to DBD, you push compute. Let me write that down. Compute days between dates, because we need to know how many days is that. And when you find this, you're going to see that it's 100 days. So that's the number of days that we're going to use. That's how many days are between March 15th to June 23rd. Now, to find our interest, we're going to take 1,500 times our interest rate of 7% times the number of days. Now remember, on this one we're using 365. We're using exact interest. That's how our book talks about exact interest. Interest is 365. Ordinary interest is 360. And it seems like we use that more often than the exact interest. And so when we calculate this, we get interest of $28.77. And then maturity value, I'm just going to say MV, maturity value is going to be 1,500 plus 28.77. So at the end of the loan, we would owe $1,528.77. Okay, so we're going to do the same calculation but use 360 days, and you'll just see a little bit of a difference in the amount of interest. Okay, so we already know that it's 100 days. We calculated that on the previous example. So let's find our interest. 1,500 times our interest rate in decimal form. Don't forget that part. We always change it to decimal form to calculate. And then it's 100 days out of 360. So remember, calculate 1,500 times 0.07 times 100 divided by 360, and you'll find your interest of 29.17. Now, from the previous example, our exact interest was 1528.77. No, sorry about that. It was 28.77. That was the maturity value. 28.77. And with this method, it is 29.17. And this all has to do with the fact that it's a smaller fraction if we're dividing by 365, so it makes it a little bit less than when we divide by 360. Now we also need the maturity value. I'm just going to do MV. The maturity value for this loan would be 1,500 plus our interest amount of 29.17. So that would be 1,529.17. All right, let's see what the next question is. I think we can do this one before time's up. I always try to limit these to 15 minutes. Pam Wendell borrowed $14,000 to pay for her child's education at Riverside Community College. She must repay the loan at the end of 9 months in one payment with 6.5% interest. How much interest must she pay, and what is the maturity value? So 6.1/2% interest would be 6.5%. So you would want to write it in decimal form as a decimal percent, and then decimal form for calculation purposes. We're going to calculate then 14,000 times our interest rate of 0.065, right? That's what it looks like in decimal form. 9 months out of 12. So our interest calculation is $382.50. And then maturity value, I'll write it out this time. Will just be 14,000 plus 682.50. So 14,682.50 is what would be due at the end of the 9-month loan, right? Maturity value means you pay your principal amount plus your interest. Okay, let's look at this one. I believe I'm going to stop the video here and pick up the rest of this on the next video. Bye, everyone.